Hey everybody, this is Nick from First Coast Math Clinic. In this video, we're going to talk about rays and opposite rays. Let's get into it. So let's start with our line here. We have line AB. We know that from our video on points, lines, and planes. To name this line, we would use our 2 points, any 2 points on our line, and then draw a line above it to name our line AB. Now, a ray specifically is a part of a line from an endpoint extending in one direction. So let's find the part of a line from our line AB. So let's say our endpoint is going to be A, and we're going to extend towards B. So our ray here is going to look like this. Our endpoint is A towards B. So A is our endpoint. And we would name this ray using the same points, AB, but we draw a ray with a flat part of our arrow above our endpoint. So this would be ray AB. If we want to switch these two letters, have this BA, we can, but again, we got to reverse that arrow. So the flat part of the arrow is above our endpoint BA. Now, what if we want to reverse this and maybe have this section in blue here as our ray? So our ray would look something like this. Now B is our endpoint to A. So to name this, we could say BA, but the flat part of our arrow would be above the B. Or if we want to switch those letters, AB with the flat part of the arrow above the B. So let's put some more points on this line and name some additional rays that we see. So I added point C, added point D, and I moved point B over a little bit to give us a little bit more room, cleaned it up a little bit. So let's say we want this part of our line, we want that green ray. So that ray looks like this. All right, our endpoint is C. And then we've got D. That ray in green looks something like this. We've got our endpoint C, and it's extending towards B and towards D. So we can put CB. So we can name this ray CB or BC, and the flat part of our arrow is above the C. Or we could do CD and then have ray CD with a flat part of our arrow above the C, or DC with a flat part of the arrow above the C. All right, I cleaned everything up. Let's identify one more ray from this. So let's maybe start here. So our endpoint is B. We're going to extend in this direction. So our ray is going to look something like this. Endpoint is B, and one way we can name this, we have B and then C here. So we can name this ray BC, flat part of the arrow over the B, or if we switch those, CB, again, flat part of the arrows over the endpoint, which is B. Or we can name this BA, the flat part of the arrow over the B, or AB with a flat part of the arrow over the B. The important thing is we don't need point C here. We don't want to name this ray ACB. The same way we only use 2 points to name a line, we're only going to need 2 points to name a ray. All right, let's talk about opposite rays. So we reviewed a line, we defined ray and identified some rays. Opposite rays are rays with a common endpoint that extend in opposite directions. Let's identify some pairs of opposite rays from our figure here. So let's start just by identifying our ray. We know how to do this from the previous examples. So endpoint is C going to D. So this is ray, let's call this CD. And so what's the opposite ray? So we want a ray with the same endpoint, so common endpoint. So we're going to share that endpoint C and extends in the opposite direction. So our ray in red heads to the right, so we want to go to the left. So it's going to be, this is our ray. Put that point A back in. So CA is our ray. So we have opposite rays CD and CA. Let's identify another pair of opposite rays here. So let's work with this ray in blue here. So our endpoint is B, going towards A. So this is going to be ray BA. We know we could also call this BC. All right, so two different ways we can name that ray in blue. And let's name the opposite ray. So our opposite ray, and I'll do this in green. So we want a common endpoint. So our common endpoint is going to be that B. And we're going to extend to the right because our opposite rays have to move in opposite directions. So we're going to head to the right. So this is going to be BD. So we have a common endpoint of B and B. And we know we could also name this, I don't know if we want to switch that, DB with the flat part of our arrow above the B. Okay, so from this figure, let's name some opposite rays. So if I start with maybe S as my endpoint and head to the left, we can name this SR. So endpoint is S, and our opposite ray is going to head in the opposite direction with a common endpoint. So we're going to start at S, or endpoint's going to be S, and we're going to head to the right. So now this is going to be, we can call this S and then use any of these points here. So I'll call this maybe ST, or if you also want to call it, like we can call it SU, SV, so a couple different options we have there. Or what if we name maybe this ray here in blue UV? All right, so our endpoint is U, and I want to name an opposite ray. So if I do this in red, well, if I start here, maybe this ray here in red, take a second, would this be an opposite ray, yes or no? And the answer is going to be no, because specifically, well, they're heading in opposite directions. One's going to the right, one's going to the left. What they're missing is that common endpoint, right? So our ray in red needs to start, or needs to have that common endpoint at U. So if I redraw this ray in red from an endpoint of U, going in the opposite direction. So this is going to be, we'll call this UQ. Again, with the flat part of our ray above the U. Or if we want to maybe use any of these other points here, UT. All right, let's name a, all right, what if we do T is our endpoint, head to the left, so this is going to be TQ. So flat part of our arrow above the T, so that's our endpoint. So our opposite ray, then again, we want to share the endpoint, so we want a common endpoint. So endpoint's going to be T. We're going to head in the opposite direction. So opposite ray is going to be in red. So we can name this maybe TV. So our opposite rays here are going to be, and here, TQ and TV. Remember, there's different ways that we can name this as well, right? So if I want to rename, instead of using TV, I could name this TU. Instead of naming this TQ, I could call this, maybe just use any of these other points, TS. So a bunch of different ways that we can name these rays, all right? Let's do a couple more examples where we practice naming rays and opposite rays. So let's look at these examples for numbers 1 and 2. Number 1, take a couple seconds, pause the video. I want you to name two different rays that you see here for number 1. If I unpause this, hopefully the rays that you picked out, we have one endpoint at L, extending to the left, so this is going to be ray LM, or we could also name this LN. So our endpoint here is L. Another ray, we could have the endpoint M, extending to the left. So this is going to be ray MN. Or if we want to switch those points, the flat part of our arrow above the M. Number 2, I want you to identify a pair of opposite rays here for number 2. Take a minute, pause the video, and name a pair of opposite rays. Right, so we know our opposite rays have to extend in opposite directions and share an endpoint. So Let's say we start maybe here with one ray in red. So this is going to be CF. Well, the opposite ray, if I do this in blue, have the same endpoint in C, but it's got to head in the opposite direction. So we're not going to head like up. We're not going to head down. It's going to head to the left. We're going to head C to A. So this would be ray CA. We could also name this like CB or CE for these two rays. Let's name another pair. So maybe if we go from C to D, all right, C is our endpoint. So if I do this in purple, our opposite ray is going to go from C to H. So we have a common endpoint, C and C, and we're headed in opposite directions, okay? Let's do one more example. All right, so for the last example, I'll give you 5 different rays. Let's name the opposite ray to these 5 rays. So let's start with ray WA. So WA has our endpoint of W, extends in this direction. What will the opposite ray be? So we want the same endpoint. So same endpoint is going to be W, and it's going to extend to the right in the opposite direction. So this is going to be, you can name this WB, or any of the points here, WC. Okay, so any of these points. Let's do the next one, BN. So we'll do this in blue. So endpoint is B, and we're going towards N. So what's the opposite ray? So we want the same endpoint. So endpoint's going to be B. Instead of going to the right, we're going to go opposite direction. We're going to go to the left. So our ray in purple is going to be DA or BW. So 2 different ways we can name that. Let me clean this up a little bit. It's CW. So our endpoint is C. We're going to extend to W. So that's in blue. Let's name the opposite ray in red. So again, endpoint, going to have a common endpoint. So endpoint's going to be C. And we're going to extend to the right in the opposite direction. So we can say this is CM or CN or CR. So 3 different ways we can name that ray in red. MR. So endpoint is M. Extend towards R. So that's our ray in green here. Let's do this in dark blue. So we want the same endpoint, M, and we're going to extend in the opposite direction. We're going to extend to the left. So we can say this is MC, or again, any of these points here, MB, MW, MA. So 4 different ways we can name that ray in blue, in dark blue. All right. Before I do the last one, I'm just going to clean this up a little bit more. All right, last one, NB. So we're starting at N, or endpoint's N. We're extending towards B, so it's this ray in red here. So our opposite ray, do this in yellow. Same endpoint, N, extending in the opposite direction. So this is going to be ray NR. Let me make that arrow a little nicer. Here we go. All right, so this video was on rays and opposite rays. I hope this video helped you understand those concepts a little bit more. If you like this video, leave a like, comment, and subscribe. This is Nick from First Coast Math Clinic.